First of all, thanks so much for being a part of this. If you don't know me, I'm Tim Jacobs. I'm the district superintendent for EFCA West. And as terrible as this whole situation has been, it's also been quite a good opportunity for us as a district to be able to get so many of our pastors and leaders from around the district through, trying to talking through all this stuff. And so thank you much for joining this call. I want to let you know a couple things. First, we'll hold it to about an hour. Hopefully I'm not breaking up, by the way. I got a note saying I was breaking up. If I'm breaking up, I'm sorry. I will work on that. It was working fine earlier, but first of all, if you could mute your mic when you're not, Sochi can do that for you. Wave, Sochi. If you don't know Sochi, she's our admin for EFCA West. She's fantastic. And Bob Osborne also on the call. Bob is our director of church health for EFCA West, and he is growing quite a beard in his isolation. And Bob's a fantastic guy and certainly someone I've learned a ton from. So we have a fantastic staff and so anyway, keep your mic muted talking. Try not to share your screen by accident too. That's happened a few times on ours, and that can be kind of funny. And then, by the way, we are running this, and anything you can and will be used against you. And so just so you're aware of that. But it's great to see all the different faces we have here, and I'd love to take time to go and meet all of you guys, but just in the interest of time, and hopefully what we'll be able to do is we'll record this, we'll upload it later. One of our hopes is that you guys don't know each other, maybe you get to know each other a little bit, and we'll ask you later on, but if you wouldn't mind even letting us use your email everybody who is on this call, so you can continue to kind of, encourage each other. And a lot of us were just building plans. I do want to introduce the guy who I've kind of asked to host this for us today, and that is Mike Szoradi with the Darth Vader background. Mike Szoradi is is at Compass Church in Goodyear, Arizona. Mike and I worked together for 12 years or so, about 10 years or so. Mike is our director of student ministries at Compass Church. And so I've just kind of asked him to chime in on some things. What I want this to be too, and make sure you hit that box or you pull up the chat box. And so if you have a question or a comment, some of inside conversations, that's all cool. Whatever you want to chat, put in the chat box, because that's help us, together. So you can take advantage of that. But really the idea is that we learn from each other. And like I said, you want to chime in on anything. So Mike, we'll start with I want you to ask a couple of questions. First, tell us a little bit about, here we are, we're all in the same boat. Everything is going fine. You're doing your student ministry, trying to do everything you can to reach students, and then all of a sudden you can't meet with them. So how did you guys react? What are some of the things that you have been doing to try to keep your students engaged?
It seems like the easy answer is we're still reacting, and we're still trying to figure out what it looks like in the long run. I guess to be more specific, the first thing that we did is we used, fortunately at Compass Church, we've been no stranger to live stream. We kind of had an idea what that looks like. We have people on our staff who know how to do that. So we launched a midweek event live every Wednesday night. Within about a week, we had our student ministry team pulling that off. Simply put, though, the first night we did it, it has not looked the same since. Really, we launched this great midweek event that we were able to do at the church, and then we had to move it to homes, private homes, hosted by one person. There was a video-based thing now. It's been something new every week, just trying to figure out how to stay connected with students. So we started with the midweek, a live experience that was fun, engaging, chat-based, where we had students interacting with each other over chat. And now we are moving and so those are the two main things we did. We did the live stream, and we focused all of our attention on one social media platform. And we just told all of our students, hey, we're going to connect together over Instagram. So everyone get an Instagram, everyone follow us on this Instagram. This is how we're going to do it. And then now what we're unfolding is adding a connection small group based experience every week on the tail end of that midweek event. So we're
What does that
learning.
look like? What does that look like, Mike? You said a tail end on a small group experience.
So we've got a live program that we'll run every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. That'll be between 30 and 40 minutes with a little sermonette. And as we're planning that and going to execute that, we're also planning a small group experience that's Zoom based with all of our small group leaders that will be right behind that. So we'll go 30 to 40 minutes live for a midweek with a game, some videos, a little sermonette, some laughs. And all of that will feed into a 30 to 40 minute small group time in Zoom. So our small group leaders will meet with their small group every Wednesday night after the live event in Zoom. So basically now that we've got everything up and running, we started asking the question, what is the best way to facilitate connection? Not just busyness, not just something to do, but how do we still connect with our students? So we decided to kind of run that way. We use the live event now to fuel and feed and resource our small group experience. That launches, that whole thing together will launch on the 15th.
What is that you're talking about?
Wednesday the 15th. So the midweek and small groups to follow.
Okay, and you said okay, I got you. Okay, cool. And so what have you guys, so have you been able, how's that been working? Do you feel like you've been able to keep connection with students, or are you having a challenging time with it, or how has it been going so far?
Yeah, I mean, basically what we've learned is the kids who want to remain connected with us they'll connect. And there are students that for whatever reason aren't participating in anything. And so we're reaching out to them, writing them letters, checking in on them more intentionally, but it is working. It's not perfect. We're learning every week, but it is absolutely working.
So I'd like to just maybe hear from a few other of you guys. Just tell us how's it been going? I mean, Mike shared a few things. We'll ask him a few more questions later on, and I have a few other questions about other aspects of student ministry. But what's going on? What's working for you guys? What are some questions or struggles? Just tell us how things have been going in your.
Yeah, I'll share if you can hear me. Things keep freezing for some reason for some of you guys, but Nathan's on here somewhere. He's at my church as well. Nathan Beck, he's our junior high director. I'm the high school pastor here. It's been interesting because what works for him in junior high ministry isn't working the best for us. And so it's finding like what works best for junior high and high school. And I'll let him share like what works best for them. But we found out that Zoom is not our best option for us as like a large group with both male and female. For some reason, the females just don't like, female high school students are uncomfortable if they're in their room or something like that with like the guys being able to see like their room, and they voiced that to their small group leaders. So it was uncomfortable for them. And that was clear off my radar. Like I wasn't even thinking, that kind of thing. So we do Zoom, we utilize only for small groups, which is killer for us. And my program looks a lot like Mike's. I pre-record worship and sermon on a Tuesday, but then it goes live on our YouTube on Wednesday night. And so how we kick it off, I go to our Instagram and we're doing the same thing. We are trying to filter everyone to one location, which is Instagram for us. And so I go live on Instagram for the first 10 minutes and I try to let a student go live with me. So there's two of us on the screen because then it gets his followers to be able to see that he went live with us. So we gain more traction and more people, which has been pretty cool because all of a sudden his unsafe friends were tuning in and some of them had terrible names. And I was like, oh my gosh, who's this person with like this name? But it's helping us reach a little more. But so after the first 10 minutes, then I direct them. I just say, hey man, the link in the bio, we're all going to go click on that. Service is live on YouTube happening at 7:15. And then we all go there and able to chat and kind of do our thing there to go live. And then right after that, they've already been sent a link by their core group leader to go into their Zoom small groups. And that's really our format. So the whole thing is from about 7 to 8:15 is our format. But that's what works well for us. And this is definitely a season where I'm trying to utilize my high school team a lot. This isn't a time to just run solo and try to do it by myself at all. So making sure their core group leaders are constantly, weekly following up with them. And I told them, don't always do the group texting, do personal, reach out to that kid and just say, hey, thinking about you. And then that person, that kid, because we found out a lot of times in group texting too, they weren't responding, but when you did one-on-one text, they were way more responsive to kind of engage and come back with us. So that's been fun. And we're trying to engage with the parents as much as possible too. Because I know for Nathan and I, we look at student ministry as family ministry. And so for us, it's like, man, we want to keep their parents informed. We want to be champions to them. So I even go as far as start texting parents saying, hey, don't forget, we're going live at 7 p.m. tonight on our Instagram. Be fun if you can encourage your son or daughter. And our numbers went up after we started personally going to the family and really going for parents and students together. But it's good. Kind of like you, Mike, this is a whole learning curve. And it was like, holy cow, man, borderline frustrating. And I really want this season to be over, if I'm being honest. But it's what we got. So it's fun to do it. Yeah, and I was reading something from a lead student pastor friend of mine about not getting caught up in the comparison trap either, because it's easy to look at what other people are doing and kind of like you said, Mike, having some of the equipment and then having me being like, gosh, I wish we had that. Because he has that, he's so much better than me and I'm a failure. And the whole point was, don't even look at that right now. Don't compare yourself to any other church or any other program, but be very intentional of connecting with students during the time, be super intentional with that. So we're definitely utilizing our HSM team to really be out there to connecting as much as possible with students and the family, but without getting caught up in that trap of, oh my gosh, the big church down the road is killing it. And then here we are in Zoom, wishing we could do what they did and to not get caught in that wishing stage. So it was good. It was kind of refreshing to read that.
Yeah. So Brandon, what church are you at?
Seacoast Community Church in Encinitas.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because we had a webinar last week with Chris Brown from North Coast and a bunch of our lead pastors on there. I don't know if you guys were on that call, but one of the things that he made the point of was he said, and they're North Coast. I mean, they're a pretty big church. And he just said, you know what? Don't be discouraged. First of all, they're not trying too hard. Their whole thing was at first they're like, we're going to do all this crazy stuff. And they said, we don't want to burn our staff out. We don't want to burn ourselves out. One of the interesting things about this situation, guys, is that everybody's in the same boat. It's not like a typical crisis where when there's a hurricane, it's localized, or there's an earthquake, it's localized. And there's a group of people that are really badly affected. And then another outer ring of people that are kind of affected, and then a bunch of people that aren't affected at all. We are all affected by this. So your families are still dealing with stuff. Your students' families are still dealing with stuff, and we're all in the same boat. The other thing that Chris said, though, that was kind of going back to your point, Brandon, was that nothing makes up for the connection. In other words, you can have a Hollywood production, but it's still not going to be as good as the personal connection that you have with your students. And so trying to leverage that. But what I heard you say too, I think is really important, and Mike brought it up also, was directing them to one platform so it's simple and clear. You guys are choosing to use Instagram, and they know when to get on. And so we have a couple things here in the chat box. So games on Zoom were mentioned earlier. This is from Martel. Super curious, for those doing games on video chat platforms, how are you accomplishing that? Mike, you guys were doing that, right? It wasn't on Zoom though, was it?
No, we used YouTube as our live stream platform initially. As of this week, we will be moving that over to Twitch, simply because YouTube is so uber sensitive to copyright material, and we we kept getting shut down. We got shut down once for a poster that was on a wall behind one of our hosts. So if you're struggling with YouTube, we've done a lot of research on this, and Twitch is another good platform. There's lots of them, but basically, like last week, here's what we did. Last week, we our live stream host pulled up a program on his computer as we're streaming, where he could draw a picture, and we played Pictionary. And so he had pictures set up, and he's drawing a picture, and we have. Like my assistant, she's in our live stream every week, and she runs our chat. And what we'll say is like, all right, Jake's our middle school director. He's going to go in here. He's going to draw a picture, and the first person to correctly guess that picture in the chat is going to win a $10 Amazon gift card. So the big thing that in terms of games, we really wanted to make sure that games were interactive. That students weren't just watching us do something, but it was something that they could participate in. And that's something I'd really like to encourage. And just something that I want to make sure that we're doing is that we don't need to just create content. The goal as youth pastors is not just to keep getting in front of our kids, to give them a live stream experience. It's to give them something to connect to us with. And so when you're running games, and you're planning a program, don't just do a program to do it. Find ways for them to interact. Interaction is one of the ways that they'll feel connection with you. So whatever games you're running, make sure that you're thinking through how they can participate in games. And last thing I'll say, if you're going, man, I don't have time for all these ideas, or I don't know where to come up with this, I'm assuming by now that you've all heard about Download Youth Ministry. It's an online website that Doug Fields runs. They have content for years on their website, and they're even running deals right now. I think if you don't have an account, you can sign up and get 2 months for free. And that's pre-made graphics, pre-made games that are designed for online experiences. So downloadyouthministry.com if you've never heard of it. I promise you it's your new best friend. And they've got sermons on there. I mean, they've got everything. Have
you used Sidekick at all for your games through them, Mike?
Yes. Yeah, we did Sidekick in our first program, and it worked great. Sidekick is challenging when you have to move to a live stream that's inside your home. Like in Arizona, we now have a stay-at-home order. And even though we can go into our church and shoot the stuff there, just strategically, we made the decision. One of our big lines for our students is that we're in this together. That's the hashtag we keep throwing out there, in this together. We didn't want to do something from the church when they were stuck at home. So we decided to do a live stream in the house and set up a home. And we have our staff shoot videos. Like this week, we're doing a video that's I saw Justin Knowles' church do. It's modeled off of MTV Cribs. And I sent a text to all of our staff and said, hey guys, why don't you give us a little 60-second tour of your house, selfie mode with your camera up here, and then end up showing us your favorite spot. And so we had all of our staff go around, shoot that video, and now I edit it tomorrow, and it becomes a big part of our live stream, just so students can see staff in their houses and things like that. So to answer your question, I have used Sidekick, but it's harder to use now that we're at a home and don't have a TV to stand in front of that we can run Sidekick off of.
Nathan Beck, I wanted to ask you, because it was mentioned earlier that you and Brandon are seeing differences in between middle school and high school. So from a middle school perspective, what nuances are you seeing that maybe is different? How are you handling all this? I can't hear you. No. Still can't hear you.
That happened to me earlier. I had to take the AirPods out. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on there.
Well, while you're figuring that,
can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay.
We're good. All right.
Yeah, so we our junior high program is 7th and 8th grade. And yeah, like Brandon mentioned, like we have just had a whole lot of differences in success, whether that's Brandon using YouTube or Instagram. I tried to do like outside of a Wednesday night program. So I think I did it Thursday afternoon or something. I did a Instagram live that did not work for us, but for us, we've been using Zoom on Wednesday nights, and I'm sure you guys are aware of it, but there's been some people that have like hopped onto Zoom calls and like yelled profanities, and like pornographic images have popped up. And it's like the first 2 weeks I just had it public. I was like, okay, here's the link, it's in the bio. And then I started to have a password on it. So that's just a slight security thing that I've done. Yeah, on our Wednesday night, not that we're doing the same program, but we've just pretty much transferred all to Zoom. And so on Wednesday nights, as our students are coming in, I start to assign them into breakout groups, because you can do that on some of the, like if you have a upgraded account. So I start to assign them as they join the call into different small groups. So 7th, 8th, boys and girls. And yeah, we hang out for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so, and then we play a game. I was actually just going to write it out in the chat, but I'll just tell you guys, one of the games that has been most successful for us is a game that we have called House Scavenger Hunt. And I've just split kids up into different teams to just kind of randomly assign them into teams. And I'll say, okay, Max, Macy, Joe, and Hannah, you guys need to go and get a spatula. And at that point, they have to run out of their room or wherever, even if they're on their phone, they can bring their phone with them. They're like, and it's like really funny to watch. And then they like grab the spatula, and then whoever gets it first gets a point. And it's been this stupid game that has been fun. And we didn't do it the second week, but they asked for it for the third week. So that was fun for us. That lasted maybe 15 minutes for that game, to try to cycle through everybody so that everybody got one shot to go and get something. And then at that point, when we were done, we went to, I muted everybody, and I gave like I think it was like less than 10 minutes, maybe 8 or 9 minutes of the message. And then I broke them off into smaller groups where all the small group leaders had discussion questions, and they did check-ins. And as the host of the call, is really cool. You can jump into the different small groups, which is something that I just wanted to make sure that I was having contact with our students and some FaceTime somewhat individually with them. And so I jump into the 7th and 8th grade boys and girls small groups. So all 4 I'd jump into, just gonna do a quick check-in. Hey guys, loving you. Hope you guys are well. And then I would send a broadcasted message to all of our breakout groups to say, hey, 10 minutes left. Hey, 5 minutes left. Make sure that you wrap up with prayer. And then I bring everybody back, do a little recap, and then maybe have a student pray us out. And then from then on, I don't really have anything going on at home. So I just kind of allowed the students to hang out it's been about a half hour afterwards, just to have time with each other, because the students are just craving connection right now, with each other, with leaders, with me, with their fellow small group students. So that's what I've found to be successful, is using Zoom once a week, and program is about an hour and 15 total.
Yeah, no, that's good. And, so I think what you're hearing, guys and gals, is a lot of, that there's a lot of online options, and obviously most of you, and if not all of you, are utilizing them. I love all of the Mafia, apparently that works really well online. I love this scavenger hunt idea. I mean, to go run around your own house and grab stuff. I mean, how fun is that? So there's a ton of ideas. One of the things I noticed just from what Mike was doing, we have a 16-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old daughter, but for our high school ministry, I mean, our 16-year-old daughter was just glued to her phone just during this whole live thing when they were doing the interactive stuff. So I think that the interaction is really good, and we can continue in the chat box to make little notes and tips and ideas. So let's continue on that. I do want to shift gears though, because I think something that capitalizes something you said, Nathan, students are craving connection. Mike, can you talk a little bit about, because we talked a lot about the programmatic elements, which is great, and we can continue to talk about that. But if we shift gears a little bit to what are the needs that are coming out that you've observed that our students have? I mean, some of them are maybe obvious, but what are our students dealing with right now that maybe is unique to them? So.
Yeah. I mean, the most obvious one right off the bat is if you're a senior in high school, this has been one of the most likely one of the most difficult months of your life up to this moment. I mean, barring some tragedy in your life where you've lost someone prior to. I mean, if you have upperclassmen, I mean, I have been spending time personally pursuing our seniors. And I think that's just important for us because it's hard to underestimate. I think it's easy to underestimate, excuse me, how much they are struggling, how sad they are, because everything that they were looking forward to, that everyone else has always gotten, has been taken from them. And now we're coming up to the point where churches and camps are having to make decisions about summer camps and summer trips. And guys, I guess it's the first thing I would say. The second thing that I would say is that students are, if you've been in youth ministry for any period of time, you know, one of the number one things that students struggle with is feeling alone. And now more than ever, right? I mean, because they are. Imagine being a only child right now. You were at school every day, you had a youth group to go through, now you're at home and your parents are working, and I mean, that's a difficulty in and of itself. I mean, the truth is our students are in unprecedented personal time, spiritually, mentally, educationally. I mean, it's unprecedented. So in terms of what they're struggling with, it's really everything. And so, you know, just to add one more thing, Tim, real quick, just to help you guys, give you guys something that I'm not sure we were going to bring up and otherwise, but when it comes to connecting with your kids, I like what was said earlier about how it can't just be about us. I'd love to challenge you guys to define what connection looks like for your team and challenge them to execute that thing. So for example, I've met with my team, with all my people, and I've said, hey guys, we are still the youth ministry team at Compass Church. We have a high school team and a middle school team. And we've had this whole strategy for this long amount of time. Right now, here's what our strategy is. Our strategy is connection and discipleship. I need to know that you're connecting with our students and that you're discipling them. You're helping them process all of this stuff. You're pointing them to Jesus. And so it's not just saying, I need you to connect and disciple. It's saying, what does that look like now? So we've challenged our leaders to do 3 things every week. Number 1, we want every student in their small group to get a one-on-one phone call or text once a week. Okay? We've told our staff, and we say this a lot, kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. I know Noel from Southwestern. We had Tim Reed as our mentor. Kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So how do we make sure they know how much we care? We pursue them. How do we pursue them? We call them or text them once a week as a small group leader. We are present on their social media, meaning I'm checking in on the social media accounts of the kids in my small group daily if I have time for that. And then number 3, we're going to meet weekly for 30 to 40 minutes in a small group. And if you can define what connection looks like for your team, then they can work within that and not feel like they have to be doing stuff every day, every moment of the day, when they've got their own families who are going through difficult times. They've got their own jobs that are potentially at risk. So the biggest recommendation I'd give is we need to define what connection looks like. and be willing to hold our volunteers accountable to that, as long as it's clear and it's simple and it's something they can do within maybe 2 or 3 hours a week, so that we're not overwhelming them with something else in this season.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I like you have specifics of ways that you want your volunteers. You're not just telling them to connect, but you're giving them specific ideas. I love the idea of being present on social media. That's a good kind of accountability thing as well. So hey, listen, there's people dropping in and seeing what you're posting and what your eyes are on and that sort of thing as best as possible. I wonder, and just thinking of this out loud, you mentioned, I think, the great point about seniors and graduation. I wonder if there's some way to mitigate against that. If maybe you guys have already thought about this, but is there some kind of way, is there something you can do? We don't even know where we're going to be in a month or a month and a half whenever these graduations take place, but something that you guys can do as a student ministry, even if it's an online thing, to celebrate this and try to make it special for those graduates. In that sense, they get something that maybe none of the other classes have gotten before. But it's funny because my daughter's 16 and I was kind of joking with her, and we did a couple Facebook Lives and stuff, and we were joking around, and I said, my wife and I have always been praying that, God, whatever you have to do to keep the boys away, during these teenage years. And then look what he does. He sends a pandemic where she can't even go out and see anybody. And so I was kind of teasing her. I said, in all of human history, or all of American history, of all the times to be 16 years old and a girl, you get, God puts you, and I was kind of joking with her about it, now when you're totally isolated. And then it kind of hit me as I was saying that, it's really sad actually too, it's the last thing she wanted. So I think it's being sensitive to what some of those emotions are and thinking, how do we fight against that? So I just love to hear some other voices here on that. I mean, what are the needs that you guys are seeing emerge from your students that you're picking up on?
Can I ask you a question to Mike real quick?
Yeah.
Kind of what you talked about, kind of two things real quick. One is, how often are you connecting with your HSM team each week? And then what's your advice on if you just have that one or two core group leaders who are just not following up as much, because then all of a sudden they find out their friends are getting followed up with and they're like, man, I didn't contact me all week. Where do you go from there, and how do you work that one out? Because like you say, this is new territory for some of these people who now their kids are at home and they're stressed out and they're busy too. So it's not like I want to be that overwhelming guy who's like, come on, get on it. But at the same time, we don't want to have students fall through the cracks and not feel cared about. So we ran into that a little bit this last week. So just wondering those two things from you, man.
Yeah. What was the first question again?
Just how often each week are you following up with your HSM team?
Yeah, we had a regular routine of that once a month on Sunday mornings, or Sunday evenings at 4:00. We would have a staff training and meeting. So we're just maintaining that. But as needs arise, I'll meet with groups. So I've met with my high school team. I know that Jake has met with the middle school team. And we've done combined meetings as well so that they could hear from me. But here's the thing. I mean, when we started going, okay, here's the direction we're going to head. Here's what we're going to start trying. We had to have extra meetings initially. And now we've hit a routine where it's like, okay, guys, I think we're good. If you're willing to run and you understand what things are, we'll meet again on the first Sunday of the month at 4:00 in the afternoon. Because that was right before we would do high school small groups. It's just a routine we've had for years. And along those lines, I think it was Doug Fields or one of these guys one time. I remember he said he was talking about how he remembered as a youth pastor, how the best youth pastors really are great pastors to our team, so that our team can be pastors to our students. So whatever it takes is the answer. Also understanding that our staff have things going on in their lives that are scary and fresh and new. So I mean, try to respect their time, but at the same time, if your ministry matters and they know that it matters, there's going to be some changes and some conversations that need to come up. So don't be afraid to hold a once a week meeting for 2 or 3 weeks until you guys have got everything figured out. You're a team. You got to act as a team and communicate as a team. So hopefully that answers the first one. And as far as the second one, I was actually talking with Tim about this maybe a week, maybe 10 days ago, how situations like this, you really see the leaders who have a heart and a passion for students, because they're going to come up to you in Zoom or text or something and go, what do we need to do? How do I need to help? What's next? And you're going to see the ones who are scared and sort of, and I don't mean this to sound derogatory, but sort of cowering with the situation and everything around them. I don't know that there's a right answer to your question, so I'll just answer it the way that I would do it. I would, if I had leaders, and I have one that was initially kind of struggling to get in the game and kind of be excited about this, I would probably just release them to go and worry about what they need to worry about. And, you know, if it was in a situation like this, I'd find, if I had to, I'd find another small group leader to maybe enfold those kids in. But here's the reality. If you have adults that are not mentally and spiritually healthy right now, you don't need them around your kids, because our adult job is to point students to Jesus. And we have to, in many ways, we have to do that from a position of overflow personally. If we're not healthy spiritually, if we're not healthy mentally, if we're not healthy emotionally, then students are going to see that and they're going to pick up on that. And frankly, we don't need that. So I would say that there's a lot of other options, creative options that you could probably come up with, even if it meant temporarily combining two small groups into a larger group, to at least get students who are listening and engaged with an adult who's in a better place, who can point them to Jesus.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, Mike. You know, Troy wrote over here, just going back to our earlier comments, that he had a senior who missed the first half of her senior year battling lymphoma, beat it, praise God, got to go back, but now is going to miss the last quarter of the year. So that goes back. There's all kinds. It's affecting everybody. It's affecting adults, affecting students. And then Isaac, I love what you wrote there. I'm concerned about those who have a history of mental health. One of our adult leaders had a cousin committed suicide. I think there's some high-risk students should be identified and surrounded with peers and leaders. So it's being sensitive to that as well, and knowing that that's there. You know, one of the things, this is an idea for you guys. I don't know if this just came to me right now, but one of the webinars that we want to do in a few weeks is actually for all of our lead pastors, or anybody, quite frankly, but kind of our general webinars we've been doing on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock Pacific, is get a mental health expert on to help, you know, and obviously we want that person to be a believer, not just a bunch of psychobabble, but actually be trained in some like maybe PTSD kind of stuff, to help our pastors identify that in the people that they see and even walk them through that. I've served for 6 years as a chaplain in the Air Force Reserve, and they teach you how to deal with some of that stuff as well, and just identify it and see it and all that kind of stuff. So some of that would be good in this instance, and maybe even for you to have maybe a little bit of PTSD identification training, and even be able to walk through the stuff as it comes to shepherding not only your students, but also your adults. Because I love what you said, Mike. It's really out of the overflow that we are able to minister, and we got to keep ourselves personally healthy. I was mentioning earlier, I have a bunch of Post-its all over my little war room dining room here in my house. And I have one of them that's just a list of priorities. And the number one thing is cultivate energy. And that's spiritual energy, that's physical energy, that's emotional energy. So then my number one job is I've got to be cultivating energy in my own personal life. So what does that look like with my own discipline and my habits, my engagement? You know, it's so easy to get up and, you know, am I spending time with God? Am I connecting? Am I staying healthy so that I can have that overflow? You guys know this, it involves in every area, but I think especially now, because you're dealing with a very vulnerable group, high school students, middle school students. And by the way, we don't know what situations that they've got going on in their homes. I mean, you might know some of them, but you don't know if they've got abusive situations that are kind of, you know, we know these kinds of things happen behind closed doors, and they're behind closed doors all the time. So I think that's a continual challenge. Anybody else want to speak into that?
Hey, this is Isaac from Felton Bible Church. I'm talking through my phone, but I got my computer on. Yeah, I think that I'm in the National Guard as a company commander, and I have lots of soldiers in this time, and they're 18, 25, age range, and so they're very, very similar to our college age students, and seeing a lot of PTSD through them. And so obviously I'm really encouraged for us to get somebody with a little bit more experience to kind of feed us some information about how we can really surround our students and mobilize our student leadership, and even our adult leadership, and even some of the demographics within our church that maybe aren't normally involved. I have a particularly high senior population in our church that I know they're not technologically engaged, but if we can get them maybe engaged, just picking up the phone and surrounding other adults that are supporting our students. I don't know if that's a trickle effect that we can try to implement, but I just think that we really need to mobilize the church as a whole to just surround as many people as possible.
Yeah, yeah, and you're exactly right. One of the themes that came out, we had our children's ministry webinar earlier today with about 35 different children's ministry leaders from around our district, and that was one of the themes that came up as well, is leaning into people that we normally wouldn't talk to. Where are the audiences or the people in our church that up until this time we just didn't really think much about, that could actually be really beneficial to us, in terms of the people that we're serving. One of the things, and again, this is why I love the fact that Bob Osborne's on the call with us. He's been on every webinar, and it's just golden wisdom like this that Bob has, that we want to provide training to our parents about student mental health, as they're the ones spending most time with students. So, so that may be something that you want to provide, is offering, maybe you offer a webinar to your parents, to the parents of the students, and say, hey, listen, guys, can we just talk about this? And, Dale makes a good point. Our mental health is directly connected, and I think we can certainly incorporate that. In terms of making those connections, and certainly we can't divorce those two. But I also think that there are certain signs that you can look for, and there's certain ways of even walking through some of these issues with people that are really helpful when it comes to them even just developing some stability in their life when it comes to the fear that they may be dealing with that's prolonged over a long period of time. So, hey, Anna, I'm going to ask you a question, if you don't mind, since you are one of our only females on this call. Can you talk about what you've seen with the young ladies in our student ministries? Anything that those of us guys may just be kind of blind to? What are you seeing? Anything you can help us out with?
I don't know if this is necessarily specific to young women, although I have several female students who have brought this up. But I think one thing to remember is that there is, I would say one of the things our students are dealing with is feeling God's absence or not feeling his presence during this time. And so I think it's important to remember that when we are among the community of believers, it isn't just a feeling that there is something about that is like a tangible presence of God. There actually is, the image of God is made manifest when we're together with other believers. And there is something about that actually is a big part of our students' experience with who God is and how he tangibly makes himself known in their lives. And so I think a lot of my students are dealing with, or some, I wouldn't necessarily say a lot, but some have made mention that they feel an absence. And so that's something to just remember. And that is something that I think is, I would say probably none of my students are looking at this as like a scary situation because they're in a demographic that isn't going to be highly affected if they get the virus, and they're young enough to not consider that anything can happen to them, but they are aware of that. is God present during this time? And I think the other thing is like, what to do with actual boredom. Is there like a theology that we can draw out of the reason why work is such an integral part of who God is, and being active not only in our life but in our faith? And so I think those are a couple of things that our students are legitimately dealing with right now. And I think that the last thing I would say, and this actually is something that's been spurred on by mainly girls in the high school group, but a call to just like action, a desire for justice during this time. The idea that there are limited resources and we need to share those resources, you know, like the idea that people are hoarding right now, that has really made an impression on, I would say, the main group of my female students, especially the upperclassmen who are starting to kind of engage a little bit more with the world around them. So that is something that is, I think is something that's heavy on people's hearts, like that this is a time when there is a divide. The way that I'm experiencing this is a reprieve in my life. But the way that half of my city is experiencing this is they don't know where they're going to get food from. And so this has just caused a divide. And I think my students are really aware of that. So those are kind of the things that are weighing on their hearts and on their heads during this time.
Yeah, you know, theology of boredom, that's interesting to even dive into that, right? What do you do when you can't do anything? Wow, I love that. The other thing that you mentioned was the action. Yesterday, because at our church, at Compass Church, where I was lead pastor for 12 years, but we still live in the area since I've taken on the district superintendent role, of our executive pastors there, his wife works at the food bank in the area. And it's funny how no one wants you to go out. You know, you almost get shamed if you go outside and do anything. But one of the only things that you can do with other people that doesn't get shamed is go work at a food bank. And so I took my daughters, my 16 and 13-year-old, my wife she has to work here online for the school. And then my son is in college here online now. So I took my girls over to the food bank yesterday for 4 hours. And we had the masks and everything else, and we were involved in distributing food for our neighborhood. And wow, you talk about a cool idea. If you're going to engage high school, and I know it's sensitive with the virus and exposure and everything else, so be careful how you do it. But that may be one of the only activities that you may be able to even do somewhat together that gets justified. Martel, you got something to say?
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, with the whole justice aspect and helping people out and all that. One of the cool things that has developed out of this for us, we've got a couple of campus clubs within proximity of our church, and we've got students on both clubs. And one of the really cool things that has happened as a result is through these students, they've kind of recognized a need that's out there, and it's specifically through teen moms. On one of the campuses has a teen, what they call oh gosh, I forget the title. It's like a teen pregnancy center kind of a thing where female students can continue their high school education, finish it out, while their kids have childcare during the day for free. And so it's something that the district provides for these public schools. And so they've recognized, well, how do we continue helping some of these, some of our own peers who are moms and who do have babies at home, and how can we, if everything is hoarded off the stores, how do we help them? And they've kind of come up with this idea of, well, why don't we fundraise? Why don't we navigate this issue and fundraise, and then reach out to the teen moms themselves, see what their needs are. And it's actually been really cool, because what's ended up happening out of this is teen moms have responded back to our students saying, hey, we actually, if you can help, we actually need this. We need diapers, we need wipes, we need, these are some of our needs. If you can help us with that, but if you can't, no worries. And so through all this, our students have kind of started this little mini kind of outreach project where they're fundraising, they're asking for donations, and then in turn, the way they're staying safe is by ordering supplies online, and then having them shipped to the moms' addresses. And then, so they've kind of figured out ways to kind of find a need, fill a need, and then stay safe during the whole process, where you're not kind of, you're following all of the social distancing rules and whatnot. But I will say this, even if they didn't figure out something like that, I would have probably been willing to use a face mask, use gloves, and then do the delivery myself, and encouraging students to probably stay at home as minors. But, just throwing that out there for everyone, because I think, even if you touch bases with your students, they themselves might think of ways to help in their communities, and then even help their own peers, as has been the case for us. So just throwing that out there as a little idea.
I love that. And because so often our teenagers feel powerless anyway. And then you get them in a situation like this where, stay home and do nothing. And it's like to actually introduce them to ways that they can make a difference where they are in the time of, as we said, of boredom is fantastic. I think that's a component of, we talked a lot about, and I think that the social media, the technology is so critical for the connection. We've got to be getting into their homes as much as possible and engaging them that way. But that other side of them, what can they do that's meaningful, is a really fantastic question, because they're going to tie that, and we have to continue to tie it back to the gospel and their own calling and everything else. So that is great. I want to give we have a few more minutes here if you want to jump in. One other thought I want to throw out there too is we've been on other webinars, like again, talking with children's ministry and even with crisis response, and even listening to some stuff that Ed Stetzer's been putting out. One of the things just to be aware of, you guys, is that once all these restrictions are lifted, we also have to remember that this doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to be over. So there are talks about, one of the biggest things to be aware of is the potential for future flare-ups. So it's good to kind of have some of these, whatever you're doing now to continue to document, refine, and make better, because we may have these restrictions lifted. And then 3 or 4 months from now, just like what happened historically with the great influenza, it came back in the fall of that same year. And if we have some kind of second wave, or even if in Felton, boom, there's all of a sudden there's a hot spot again, and they want the churches to shut back down, is to kind of have the staff ready to go back into that mode again, because you may need to go back into that isolation mode. So this is really kind of thinking long-term with our leaders and with yourself about, how long this thing may last, or how it may ebb and flow in terms of its effect on us. So, but any other comments regarding any of the stuff? We have just a couple more minutes.
Just an idea that I'll share. We were low on eggs, and this was kind of accidental. And I went to Sam's Club, and they had 15 dozen eggs. They had cases of 15 dozen eggs. And so I bought 15 dozen eggs. My daughter and I went around the neighborhood and offered free eggs to people. So, and there were several that needed eggs. It was simple. We were wearing face masks. We, did that. It was a great way to meet neighbors. It was a great way for my daughter to experience that. And so encouraging families, that's what we're trying to do in our area of ministry, is encouraging families to do things like that, to sort of think outside the box. What can you do as a family? And then as parents, they get to mentor their children in ministry and reaching out in their neighborhood in those ways. So that's one thing.
Fantastic. Great. Well, we have a few minutes left. I did just want to, Kevin, you have something real quick. Go ahead.
No, it's kind of on the same vein as Mike. We had a student last week that turned 16, and a young man, and it was pretty significant. He'd been super excited about it. It's something his parents asked, and we jumped on as a youth ministry. It's kind of a drive-by birthday thing. And when I went through, there were just tons of families with son in their cars, happy birthday to him. And it also happened to be last Wednesday. So in our scavenger hunt, before we started our Bible study, all of the scavenger hunt items had to do with birthday. And so then ultimately we ended up singing happy birthday to the student on that. So even significant events in the students' lives, birthdays that can be organized like that. That was just pretty neat to see the youth group community come around that, and then just leveraging our Bible study to still honor that day. So, and I've checked out to see, making sure that other birthdays that are coming up here in the next month or so, that we'll remember to do the same thing, similar things these other students do.
Yeah, excellent. Noel, you got something?
Yeah, so one of the things for us, our youth group's large enough, I can't connect with everybody. Our small group leaders are doing a great job, but what I've focused my time in on is focusing on our parents. And for me, I probably call 10 or 12 parents a week, and just have a one-on-one conversation with them, checking in on them. Something that's been really well received by those parents, and it's something that obviously we don't have time to call every single one of them, but I can call a few. And we're going at it here in California, like we're like on week 3 of quarantine. So I've been able to call about 30 parents, and it's been something that they've really enjoyed. So spend those times calling those parents.
I love it. That's fantastic. There's been some great themes that have come out of this. So as we wrap up, there's a couple important things I want to say. First of all, if you, a lot of this that's important to us, and again, the strength of EFCA, the strength of our denomination isn't that we have every answer. It's that the answers are with you guys. And so one of the things we do, what we're trying to do well, is bring you together as much as possible. So one of the outcomes of this, hopefully, is we have all your emails because you registered for this. We're going to send you a follow-up email, and we're going to create on our Facebook page, we're going to create a group. And if you want to join that group, student ministry group, that can just be a place where you can go share ideas and continue this conversation along the way. And then hopefully maybe build some I know a lot of you guys are already well connected, maybe outside of EFCA. I get that. But I think there's a great commonality we have in terms of what we believe, our approach to the gospel, our approach to our community, our deep passion for Jesus, and wanting our students to understand and to build our families up and be about the kingdom. So hopefully we'll find some of those commonalities, and there's a lot of tools that we can share that's already happened that can extend far beyond this. So so please take advantage of that. We'll be starting that group. We'll give you an invite to that as a way of further connection. And again, we are available to you as a district staff. Anything we can do to help you out, please know that we're available. Sochi will put it's just EFCA West. You guys know how to reach us. And with that, I'm going to ask Bob Osborne. Bob, would you pray over these men and women? What they do is so important, is so incredibly foundational. There's the cement's still wet in the lives of these young people, and what they do is what you guys do as leaders. I just can't tell you enough how much I appreciate it. So, Bob, would you pray over them as we wrap up our time today?
Yeah, I'd love to, but feel compelled to mention that in my family, for me, my brother and my sister, the significant spiritual decisions we made in our lives, we made as a result of the student ministries when we were students. That's where it all happened. And our youth pastor didn't know it. He didn't know it until years later. So there's a real soft spot in my heart for that. The same has been true for my sons. Their significant spiritual growth occurred as a result of people who invested in them during their junior high and high school years. And it just is, what you do is so significant, but you seldom get to see the results. And so I really appreciate what you do. And, then just to echo one of the things that Tim shared, y'all are part of EFCA. And oftentimes, people kind of think that what we do is we work with pastors, but we like to say we work with the leadership community in a church. And that's lead pastors, it's staff, it's elders, board members. We don't want to be just lead pastor centric. So if any of us can help you with anything, please don't hesitate to call. We use the phrase leadership community very intentionally because we want to be broader than just having liaison or contact with a lead pastor. But let me pray for y'all. Father God, thank you so much for these your servants who took some time out today to gather together and in a first for us to sit here and look at each other as little boxes on Zoom and try to encourage one another and maybe spur one another on in our pursuit of practicing love for one another and having some good works. Lord, I ask that you just encourage these men and women that they would be able to take great joy in the small steps that they may see as they work with students, knowing that as those small adjustments, those small things that people learn in their junior high and high school years, when you carry those out 30, 40 years down the road, there's just so many amazing things that happen. So Lord, I pray that you would give each one on this call and all of our student ministry workers throughout our movement that you would allow them to experience your peace, your grace during this time, times of mercy and refreshment, even as they struggle and work hard to figure out new ways to connect with the students that you've brought into their lives. Lord, may we all be a part of the continuation of healthy transformational churches throughout our country and throughout our world. May we truly be able to pass on a vibrant faith from one generation to the next that will honor you, will multiply churches, will see just a great gospel movement. So thank you for this time. Thank you for the things that we may have learned and perhaps relationships that may be formed. We commit what we do to you. We trust that you have the best for us and for your churches. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And once again, thank you, Mike Szoradi, for being here today also and sharing what you shared. It was fantastic stuff. Hey guys, God bless you all. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you around.